ago, I attended the National League of Cities conference, and they had a great session on making your city camera ready. And this was in California, and these are the folks that know how to do this. And so I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot of what drives the movie industry, what drives the scouts, what they're looking for, how they operate. One interesting thing I heard was that these scouts operate in a different clock than we do. And what they're looking for are immediate answers. They're Googling things in the middle of the night. They're trying to, figure out where they want to go, what they want to do before they even see any of the folks that are in contention for it. So and a few other things we learned along the way is, what kind of photographs we need on our website, what kind of permitting do we need. And in my conversation with Mr. Palmer, we decided to start the Mayor's Movie Task Force. And what I'm asking them to come to you today, because we are light years ahead of where we were even a year ago. And I would also like to thank the CVB for partnering with us. We've got, and this crosses a lot of departmental lines. So Andy, are you going to kick us off? And these guys have become the experts on this, so I just really wanted them to share everything with you and what we're doing. And as you all know, we've had one successful filming here at City Hall. And we're looking for a lot more, not just at City Hall, but throughout Roswell, because this is a huge economic driver.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Williams. I'm Executive Director of Visit Roswell. And to Mayor Henry's point, I want to walk you through kind of the progress that we've made since the task force was established back in July. I'm going to walk through really what the state of Georgia did to make filming easy and appealing to different producers coming into the state, and how Roswell also can capitalize in that, and then what phase 2 looks like, and phase 3 even down the road. So to give you a little bit of background, we established this task force. What we really did was we identified 5 different areas that we wanted to really tackle in order to put policies and procedures into place to become more film-friendly. And the very first one is the perception of being a film-friendly destination. The second was being able to market the different resources that we have in the destination to the location managers and the location scouts, making the process as easy and seamless as possible, and then really being able to respond well and quickly to those opportunities. If we can nail those 4 different things, we can really tackle the 5th one, which is being aggressive and going out and recruiting different opportunities for film productions, whether they be commercial or major film through companies like Disney and Marvel. The task force is made up from the city of Roswell, Katrina Singletary, Michael Fisher, Chris Ward, and then Jeff and Dina from Rec and Parks, Historic and Cultural Affairs, myself and our group sales manager, Ted Basco from Visit Roswell, and then Mark Goodman from the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, who serves as the camera-ready liaison for the Greater North Fulton Chamber for the 6 different communities in the North Fulton area. So real quick, I'll talk about how Georgia made it easy. Back in 2008, Georgia, and the Georgia Department of Economic Development more specifically, decided they wanted to get aggressive with luring and recruiting film business into the state. So they established what was called the Film Tax Incentive, and they are the ones that vet that out and certify that the projects meet the qualifications that they've outlined. They offer a 20% base transferable tax credit, and then an additional 10% for certain state logo placement and product placement, up to 30%, which is transferable, and they can also be sold. So they made it very appealing for companies not only to do business in the state of Georgia, but also to come back and to really relocate here permanently, or to at least keep coming back. This applies to both resident and non-resident workers' payrolls. Production expenditures must be made in Georgia from a Georgia vendor to qualify, so they ensure the business is here within the state of Georgia with our folks. There are no limits or caps on Georgia spend, no salary caps on individuals paid by 1099, and then post-production, things like scoring the film, doing the film edits and things like that at the computers with their software. Those also qualify if the post is done in the state of Georgia. A little bit of background: Georgia is currently the #1 filming location in the world. We beat out LA, so California, New York, and even the UK. This kind of fluctuates depending on the month, but right now we are #1. Most often people know that it provides jobs to both actors, producers, and directors, but at the local level, what we're more interested in as well is that it provides jobs to the caterers, the carpenters, the electricians, plumbers, hairstylists, and whatnot that are actually in here in market that are utilized when films come into town. So again, local services and goods are purchased. They've established the Georgia Film Academy, so there is an investment for continuing education, whether somebody wants to break into the film industry or somebody starts out at a lower level position and wants to move up within it. So they are invested in the educational component of it. And then based on what Georgia has to offer with the different cities, our geography from the mountains to the coast, all of our parks, our lakes, our diverse population, and the talent that already is here in Georgia, the state of Georgia actually offers everything that a producer and a director could want for a production. And as we see the industry continues to grow and grow, it's doing very well. So by the numbers, $9.5 billion economic impact in Georgia based on the film industry. $800 million is the amount of tax credits to film that were just handed out in 2017 alone. And that's just under the UK's $820 million. Then $4.6 billion in total wages in Georgia that the motion picture and television industry is responsible for generating according to the Motion Picture Association of America. So it's big business. 92,100 is the number of jobs in Georgia that the film industry is responsible for. 300 is the number of companies that have relocated here or have expanded here since the support for the industry started in 2010. And then as of spring, that's the most recent count we were able to get our hands on. We had about 105 active or upcoming TV productions in Georgia. So they are all over the city and all over the state of Georgia. We think that's probably about the same right now. So to walk you through the structure, one thing we did is we sat down and we identified 3 different organizations that were critical in making this all work well. Those organizations are the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or predominantly known as Visit Roswell, the City of Roswell through the permitting process, and the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, where Mark Goodman works as the camera-ready liaison. He's essentially the gate opener and the funnel of all the different leads that we seem to manage, at least in this stage. To walk you through our specific roles, Mark and the Greater North Fulton's role is to serve as a camera-ready liaison. They receive leads directly from the location scouts. They funnel the leads to the appropriate CVBs or film offices. They communicate with the location scouts throughout the site selection process. They work with the area CVBs to ensure the process runs smoothly, and if possible, if necessary, they participate in the site visit when we actually get them into market to try to convince them to do business with us. Visit Roswell carries the lion's share of the responsibilities, I would say, in this initial process, and we want it that way. We like it that way. It gets us in front of them, and it allows us to be the concierge to the community. So we're the key contact for any Roswell-based film leads. We market the Real Scout system, which I'll walk you through. That's where all of our different location inventory is housed, and that's where location scouts go to see what we have to offer. We market the Film Roswell campaign to Atlanta-based location scouts. We do that predominantly through geo-targeting and LinkedIn aggressive marketing efforts to get in front of them. We coordinate and execute site visits throughout the site selection process. We guide the negotiation conversations with property and land owners and businesses. We direct scouts and production companies to Chris with the City of Roswell for permitting and next steps. And then we follow, this is a key part, we follow up with the production accounting teams to track the actual direct investment spent within the community. We would work with Chris and the City of Roswell hand in hand in that area. And then when it gets time to actually shoot, the City of Roswell's role is to set fee structure and parameters around city-owned properties and assets, to expedite and manage the permitting process, to communicate to local residents and businesses any impacts due to filming. Prime example of that is if they want to blow up a barn in the middle of the night. The communication leading into that event taking place would need to be prior to that happening, obviously, and everybody would need to know what the outcome was going to be. They guide conversations with the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area if there are any river shots to be filmed. They work with Roswell Police Department and DOT on any lane, road closures, police presence necessary, and they ensure communication and expectations between the City of Roswell and the production companies are in sync. So is what the production company telling the city it's going to do accurate? And at this point, I will let Chris Ward with the city tell you about a recent film that took place just a few weeks ago.
Okay, so first I'll tell you a little bit about our application system, apply for if that's okay. I just want to backtrack a little bit. our job as a city is to make the permitting easy, quick, and a really quick turnaround. When we were formed back in 2014, we ran into the same issue with filming that we did with permitting. It was on a PDF. They had to fill it out, bring it in. Very slow process. So when we were looking for a new application system, a software system, we came across Apply4, and they also did film. So we bought into that. We were the first city in Georgia to use them. Now there's 5 additional cities in the Atlanta metro area to use them. Apply4 helps production. It helps us to manage sometimes multiple complex shoots that go on for days in different locations. For us, it does everything from invoicing, permitting, generates reports. We can keep notes on it, so if the production comes back, we know that they've been here before, good, bad, or whatever. The real beauty of it is that we can have our liaisons on it. So we have our liaisons from police, fire, transportation, rec and park. We also have Ted from the CVB, and we have Mark from the Greater North Fulton Chamber, so that when a application does come in, it shoots out an email to all of them, and they can take a look at the application. That shuts down, that closes down the time so that we can just get on a phone call together or get together and talk about if there'll be city service needs, if there's other kind of needs that maybe Ted can handle. For the production, it's a very quick and easy process. If they register for this in California, they are registered and applied for. Speaking to a lot of the production companies, they know about Apply4, they love it. It's a robust system, answers a ton of questions, and easy to upload and easy to communicate with us. So once we get kind of through that, we also keep the lines of communication open. Our job is to kind of make sure the schedule stays as it's supposed to. We work with the city services to make sure if they need a road crew the road, or we need police presence, that we coordinate all of that with our liaisons. Additionally, we let businesses, restaurants, or homeowners know that there will be a production going on. As you saw here, as Andy referenced, this was a very big production for us. It was You Can't Take My Daughter. It was a Lifetime original movie. It was a 4-day shoot. A lot of changes went on behind the scenes, calls at, like Andy said, 10, or I think Mayor Henry, you alluded to it, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. We were getting calls that they wanted to switch things up because rain was coming in. So a lot of quick communication and quick turnaround. This 4-day film that took place at City Hall generated for the city facilities $15,000 for facilities and staff usage. We had the base camp out in our parking lot as well. The direct spend in Georgia for the month that they were here was $1 million, and our direct spend for the city of Roswell was $78,500. That doesn't include, because they couldn't capture if the actors or the crew members went out and ate on their own or got gas at one of our gas stations. But that's the true number of fuel and gas that they use for their trucks, their equipment, any kind of rentals that they use, some of their food that they brought in from caterers, any props, wardrobe, or supplies. And again, I can't stress the fact that it works because there's a lot of communication between the CVB, ourselves, Mark from the Greater North Fulton Chamber. I think that's only going to be moving forward a really positive aspect now that we've kind of got the ground rules down and we know who's doing what. It makes for a really easy turnaround for all of us.
All right, so let's talk about how we actually land a film production. Continued growth in the inventory, so it's a part of our job really to know the Roswell community backwards and forwards. What Ted Basco, our group sales manager, does is he's out and about in the community, checking out neighborhoods, really taking in the different architectural styles, walking into buildings, learning if they have high atriums, high ceilings, really just learning every bit that we can. So understanding what our inventory looks like and growing that inventory and making sure those different types of things are located on the Real Scout, which I'll walk you through in a second here. Rapid response, this one is crucial. Location scouts can make a decision on where to locate a film within a matter of minutes if we drop the ball and don't get back to them quickly enough. So Ted knows that a part of his responsibilities are no matter what he's working on at any given point, that if a location scout comes knocking, he stops what he's doing right then and there and he responds to that location scout. He's done an amazing job of that. Resourcefulness and aggressiveness, so going basically to the ends of the earth to find what a location scout is looking for and using our services and our resources with the city, with the chamber, with the different organizations and community stakeholders to really hone in on what it is that the location scout's looking for to see if we can make that work. buttoned up site visits and tours, being welcoming to them and getting them in town, into market to actually take a look at some of the assets that we have to offer, but then exposing them to other opportunities that they might not have considered. So obviously, if they come to us and want to shoot one scene for in a particular building, we want to see what other opportunities there might be so that we can keep that business in Roswell. A big one is expedited permitting processes. So making sure that we can get them through the permitting process as quickly as possible. The kicker on this one is that not a lot of communities and destinations market this. In fact, a lot of them will tell you that they don't offer expedited permitting process. This is a very big opportunity for Roswell to say, not only are we extremely film friendly, but we will get you through the permitting process as quickly as possible. That is music to a location manager's ears. And then advocating ourselves as being film leader friend, and that one's critical because it all starts with the location scouts, and as big of an industry as it is, they are a very tight-knit community. They talk to one another. Word of mouth is extremely important, and they will tell one another whether a community is film friendly or not. So, are we turning a new leaf? We absolutely are. We've gotten some testimonials from location scouts and producers, and I don't say this to brag, but there is a common theme in all of these that I'm about to show you, and it's the fact that we are responding rapidly and quickly, and we are bending over backwards to make things happen for these scouts. This is Andrew Grind. This is a local Roswell producer, actually, who lives here, we've cultivated a great relationship with this gentleman. He's helping us out on a number of different things, has given us great feedback, and really wants to see Roswell do well. As a matter of fact, he does a lot of shooting in the downtown area, goes up to Nashville. Because of the program, this Film Roswell program we're establishing, this is actually making him want to keep a lot of his business in his own community as well, which he wasn't able to do in the past. Jen Ferris is another big location scout. Obviously, you'll see again, she appreciates the patience and the graciousness and the quick response. And then Tyrell was the associate producer for the film Chris just talked about, so obviously going above and beyond. These people are dealing with a lot of different things and don't have a lot of time to make decisions. They are in a hectic work environment, so anything that we can do to get them the responses they need as quickly as possible goes a really long way and makes them want to come back to film with us for other productions, or if it's a continuing series, like a Netflix series, for example, one of those as well. So Visit Roswell just launched our new website, and a big part of that was that we wanted to really bulk up our film page on that. And one of the things we had our creative agency do is up here you see this film icon, a camera icon. So no matter where you are on the website, wherever a scout is, whether he's looking at lodging opportunities, wants to know what the dining scene looks like, what the history of the community is, he or she always has quick access to that camera page. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to click out of this and actually walk you through what the Film Roswell page looks like. So when you click on that, it takes you to Film Roswell. And what we've done is we've done a nice little welcome bit of copy that highlights our quick speed, response speed, expedited permitting, and then we really highlight the different assets that we have available. The fact that we have a vacant jail is huge right now. Not a lot of communities offer that, and it's one of the most highly sought after pieces of inventory that we have right here. We walk you through that. We also have an area for location scouts and production managers that list the services that we provide, how to list your property if you're a homeowner or a business owner, and how to list your support services, for example, if you're a caterer or carpenter or electrician, things like that. Phase 2 for us is going to be developing a page for that particular set of inventory specific to Roswell. What we're really excited about that we worked on with Real Scout, which again is where all of our different inventory is housed, is that not only we worked with them to create a page that's aesthetically in theme with our website. See, it looks like you're actually out of the Visit Roswell page right now, but it doesn't feel like you are. We've also worked with them to establish 2 different groups, 30075 and 76 zip codes, specific to Roswell. When you go into any other Real Scout page and you type in 30075, it'll bring up the World of Coca-Cola and the Georgia Aquarium and nearby communities. It basically populates Metro Atlanta. What we were able to do is work with their staff to create those 2 groups so that when anybody accesses Real Scout from our website, they only see Roswell listings. So we keep them on Roswell business and homes. So any of our homeowners and businesses have access to go in and create listings. This is an area that we really need to bulk up. We've got about 100 listings right now. I'd like to see that number doubled within the next year. But one of the things that the Visit Roswell team has done is we've started bringing in professional photographers to shoot some of the city assets. We've learned that scouts like to see things shot on a cross. They like to see things from specific angles. So most recently, we shot council chambers, the machine shop down at the old mill, the Roswell courtroom here at City Hall, and not added yet, we shot the jail as well. So when someone, a location scout, for example, clicks into this listing, they can see a variety of different photography shots. What they do is they download these photos and they put these into proposals and presentations to go back to their producer to pitch. And if they determine that's what they like, they'll come into market, bring photographers, and that's when we have the opportunity to host them for a site visit. Back into it. Okay. So this is exciting. One thing that we need to be prepared for is we're going to lose a lot. We're going to lose a lot, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that because the amount of, the quantity of leads we're going to get is about to really increase. What we have to understand is that just about every other community in some form or fashion is touching film. And if location scouts don't see what they like, they'll go into another community or they'll simply go into a film studio and build it. Atlanta, particularly the Atlanta area, is saturated with film studios. It's more expensive to do that. So one of the things we want to do is make sure we're able to really market the assets that we have and convince them that we have what they need in Roswell. So, for example, since we've established the Mayor's Movie Task Force in July, we received 34 leads, film leads. We've won 5 of those. We've lost 20. 4 are currently active. 5 are what we call inactive. They died. They determined they wanted to stall the movie for whatever reason. There were budget concerns, and they need to reevaluate. And then we've hosted 6 different site visits. What I can tell you about these active films is that these are high octane. I mean, we're talking about not just Lifetime Productions now. We're talking about Marvel, DC Comics, CBS Productions, Warner Brothers. We're actually starting to land really qualified film production companies. So if Lifetime came in for 4 days and spent $78,000, just imagine what a DC Comics or a Marvel could do if they come into market and spend 2 weeks with us here. There's big money. And one of the things that I will point out too is that we went back to track the numbers, and from January 1st, 2018 to June 30th of this year, so essentially the past 1.5 years, we only received 16 film leads. So we've already more than doubled the amount of film leads that we have coming, just based on the establishment of the work we've done on the film task force since this July. So we do feel like we're making good strides. We just need to really start landing business, and we certainly need for the location scouts to understand that we are extremely easy to do business with, so that we're the first call right off the bat. We don't necessarily want them going out to other communities and farming out leads. We want them picking up the phone and calling Ted, saying, here's what I need, how do we make this happen? And we're at that point where we feel good about and confident about doing that. So some common reasons for losses. We track this as well. Most commonly, the production company decided to build on set within a film studio. The landscape or the terrain wasn't quite right. We've had, very detailed location scouts that come in with specific architectural styles. They need the yard a certain way. They need the neighbors' homes to look a certain way. There needs to be a certain type of landscaping, whether it's trees or stonework. And, it didn't all match up. So we lost it because of that. The business owner or the property owner declined interest. That's an area where we feel like the Visit Roswell team and the Film Roswell team can actually educate and get people online and really on board with doing this. Roswell didn't have the needed asset or the inventory, so for example, they came in seeking something that we just didn't have. Or the physical space didn't align with the need. So for example, they needed a transportation control center. We had that, but it was too small. The line of sight angles were a little bit different and difficult to shoot. So they were interested in it, for example, but they decided to go another route just because of the space. So what are the next steps? So we've laid the groundwork. We're changing the perception of being film friendly. We're starting to build the inventory. The actual committee, the task force, we feel like firing on all cylinders and really covering a lot of ground. The next step for us, phase 2, is establishing quarterly community workshops. for the purpose of two different reasons. First, we want to educate our residents and our business owners of what the film industry looks like, how it can change at the last minute, how to negotiate, how to talk to location scouts, and really how it can turn on a dime, and what that lifestyle really is all about. And then we also want to update them and educate them on how to populate their listings in Real Scout, because more often than not, that's where it's going to start with them. It's going to have a location scout logging on and being interested in a particular photo that he or she sees. We're going to produce a sizzle reel. We're working with a local producer right now in the Roswell area who's offered his services to help us with about a minute to a minute and a half video that covers a lot of different grounds, highly visual, shows the different assets that we have, and has a script that talks about us being film friendly and talks about expedited permitting. Continued advertising. The Visit Roswell team is going to continue to go after location scouts here in the metro Atlanta area, LA, and New York. Added film-specific meeting and trade show attendance, so actually traveling to trade shows to recruit different producers and location scouts into market. And then phase 3 would be the creation of incentives for filming in Roswell. We take a look at several different communities around the state of Georgia that have film commissions or incentives in place. More often than not, it always leads us back to Savannah and Columbus. They do a really good job with that. Interestingly enough, their incentive programs really seems to kind of mimic one another. They're a little bit different by the numbers, but offering rebates and relocation fees for talented crew and things of that nature. That's just one more way we can actually entice production companies to come into market to spend their dollars here. So once we get phase 1, which we feel good about, phase 2 really under our belts and firing under all cylinders really well, we think that establishing the incentive plan and working with the city of Roswell and you all on that would be the next step for being much more aggressive with what we want to do here. And with that said, I will entertain any questions that you all have.
Well, first I'd like to thank you all that are on the task force for your time and your now expertise. I realize that for all of us it was a learning curve, but you all have done a great job, and I'm so excited about this because this is so important to the city of Roswell. Does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, again, thank you. I think you answered one of my questions, which was how do private property owners or private homeowners get involved? And so I think just getting that message out to folks that all they need to do is register. I know there's a big market for that with the film industry and also even just with local photographers, advertisers, and marketers. So hopefully that's a good
That'll probably start with us submitting press releases to local media.
Right.
And then for these particular workshops, bringing in professional photographers, that really advertise the need for proper photography if they want to be listed, bringing in production company liaisons and location scouts to say, here's what it looks like when we come into your home.
Right.
We take out a wall, here's what we owe you,
Right.
a week later after we close. So just having very honest conversations about what that
There
looks
is a
like.
little bit of trade-off. But I did want to ask a question about how are you marketing or promoting the availability of local electricians, makeup artists, caterers, and that sort of thing?
Right now, I would say that's passive. So they have the opportunity to go into the state of Georgia's job listing, industry job listings site. That was brought up. It's currently listed on the Film Roswell page.
Right.
What we want to do, so if you go in and populate your listing right now, it's going to put you in the entire state of Georgia's database, which is great. They need to be in that. We're going to actually build one out similar to how we did our Real Scout page. It's going to show our photographers, our catering companies, our electricians, and again, that's constant education. That's kind of in that phase 2 of educating the community service providers.
Right.
So we'd like to build that out specific to Roswell.
I think that's a great way to get our local businesses as a part of the crew and keep more of that production cost right here in town. So thank you.
Palermo?
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Williams, for a great presentation. We got to have this discussion about a month ago in your office, so I appreciated getting even more of the deep dive, and just really again want to commend you and the whole task force and all the partners on doing a great job, and just my hope is you'll continue to find opportunities to even improve the process, make it smoother, and that you're not going to hesitate to reach out to this entire mayor and council, because I look forward to seeing any opportunities you give for us to help with improving, whether it be the permitting process or anything else, just to make sure we're being very, very business friendly and creating a great opportunity for Roswell.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Yes.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with what I see here, sir. What about dealing with homeowners associations? I'm with the homeowners association. We have the largest homeowners association in Roswell, and we have the largest lake in Roswell, which I would imagine would be an amenity that might be of interest. Please, may I get your card before you leave so I can talk to our foundation?
Yes, and that's a good question. So the Visit Roswell team would take the initial call from the location scout, and for example, if we determined that the appropriate home was located in Horseshoe Bend, we would go directly to the homeowners association to make sure. I know there are covenants and different rules and regulations. Brookfield, where I live, for example, it's a little bit looser because there aren't covenants and it's a voluntary HOA. So that might be an easier neighborhood to film in, for example, and that's something that a location scout's going to want to know. But what I'll tell you, if a location scout gets their mindset on a particular home or a business, or in this case, it would be a home because of an HOA, they're usually pretty amenable to making things happen and working within the confines of what that HOA would want.
Well, and let me also add to this, because there are two facets to it. Martin's Landing has hosted a film, and they used a house in North Shore, I believe it was North Shore, that was a classic mid-century modern, like a Brady Bunch house. And then they went to Martin's Landing Foundation, and they used their the River Club as their setup area and their where they feed everybody. And then they also rented parking spaces in neighbors' driveways, so even the neighbors make money. But then to what Mr. Fleck was saying, you've got the other aspect, which is if Martin's Landing Foundation was interested in showcasing the lake or showcasing the River Club or showcasing anything that they want to showcase in Martin's Landing, they could do that as well. But and I'll tell you, Martin's Landing has a lot of great homes that those folks are looking for. And at first, when I started getting interested in this, I kept thinking, or historic homes. Everyone wants to come here for the historic homes. But it's actually the mid-century modern, the ones that you're not expecting to be on their radar. The other thing, too, Katrina and I were at a Coffee Connect with the film industry down in Atlanta. And I can't remember how it came up, but somebody said something about, we need things like municipal complexes, jails. And I raised my hand and I said, we've got an empty jail in Roswell, and you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, everybody, all of these scouts just came rushing at us. And I thought, really? I've never even thought about it, a jail. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for HOAs as well as homeowners as well as businesses.
And the HOA could have a listing even.
Sure.
That could be the gate opener for
Sure.
the entire neighborhood.
Additional questions from the public? Yes?
I just have a question. Christine Hall.
If you would come up, Councilmember-elect, if you approach the table, we get you on record.
Sorry. Can you speak to the nature of this industry during downturns in the economy? Is it fairly recession-proof, and is it something that you can talk to?
That is a good question because they established the film incentive in 2008 when we were kind of going through all of that. I can tell you, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe year over year it's done nothing but grow. Some of the things that we keep a handle on are really more of the legislative items. Not to get political on it, but we have to watch those things because obviously there are companies that say they're going to leave the state of Georgia. So as far as the economy, I'm not sure because we haven't really experienced that yet in Georgia. What I will say is kind of a second answer to that question is Georgia's done a really good job of establishing infrastructure for the film industry with the different film studios, with the film incentive, and then with the local talent even coming out of the universities now, and especially with the Film Academy. So it's an extremely strong industry. If we were to experience an economic downturn, my personal take is that the film industry would still continue to be kind of one of the anchors for the state.
And that's the same thing that I had learned at the convention was that the film industry is somewhat recession-proof because people need and seek out entertainment when everything is going south. So they want something, warm and fuzzy and feel good. It's an easy diversion. Additional questions?
comment, with all the availability of streaming media and all the different channels, that's just going to amplify the number of opportunities that are available.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's actually, in a few of these communities I mentioned, they actually have incentives for online streaming, things that don't even make it to the big screen. And, commercials and really, when you get down to it, video gaming, I mean, it kind of comes into, so there are multiple facets of it that we can consider. It's not just about, the big Disney movie that everybody sees.
Well, thank you again to the task force. Thank you for presenting, and we'll ask you to come back on not a regular basis, but just give us updates on what's going on and how many films we've nabbed, how many commercials.
Absolutely.
It's exciting.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the other thing I would like to say too is thank you for the collaboration between the CVB and the City of Roswell. You all have done a great job working together, and I'd like to thank you for picking up the ball on a lot of this. I know that you all are very excited about doing this kind of work.
Absolutely. We love it. We're having a blast.
Yeah, terrific.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Andy.
Do they need a few minutes? Okay. Chief? If you wouldn't mind presenting and just tell us what we're looking at, and then I know that you'll dive into exactly what we're looking at.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Carol Razor-Cordero, and I'm from the Center for Public Safety Management in Washington, D.C., and we were hired to look at your police department, the operational aspects of it. And we have completed a full report that we had submitted to the city as well as the chief, and we were requested to give an overview of the findings from the report. The report is rather extensive. It's about 193 pages, and I didn't want to take up the entire evening. I didn't think you would appreciate that. So what I did is I looked at the recommendations that I thought would have financial impacts, because some of the recommendations that are listed are really process. They can make the changes with really any financial impact, but some of them are going to cost some money. So what I'd like to do is to discuss some of them to see if you have any questions pertaining to them. And I want to thank the chief for being here tonight as my co-presenter. Let me give you a little background. This was all the staff members that were involved in the study. Tom and Leonard and Dove are both the working partners for the Center for Public Safety Management. Dove does the data analysis. He has a PhD from Rutgers University, and he was the one that went in and pulled all your CAD data for analysis. And he has a team also that assists him. Ron Gould, and let me jump down to Paul O'Connor. They were the two gentlemen that conducted the focus groups. CPSM was requested to do both internal and external focus groups to look at the culture as well as the perspective of the members within the department and the community members. And the remaining members up there, we were the operational team that went into the police department. We had specific areas we were responsible for to look into the documents that we had requested earlier. We send out a document requesting 90 different documents, policies, data, so that we can look at that before we even touch down on site, so we get a real good understanding about the department. And I'd also want to say, too, about this is we were initially, when we were contacted, I felt the city and the department were very upfront that you had a couple of incidents that came to the public's attention and maybe shed a negative light on the department. Overall, I want to tell you that I am very impressed with the Roswell Police Department. Yes, there had been mistakes that have been made on a couple of incidents, but they are hardworking men and women with this department, and we've done assessments all over the country. So I'd like to first set the tone of that, because it was a pleasure dealing with the staff. They were very open. They assisted us in every way possible, and they were, I believe, very honest in their feedback. So we have a project methodology that we do, and we keep it pretty consistent from department to department. The reason why is we do a lot of cross-analysis, where we look at response times from, say, the Roswell Police Department in comparison to the 250 police studies that we've done to see benchmarking. So you'll see in our reports a lot of similarities in the methodology that we use. I want to discuss a couple of overall findings and then talk about the recommendations. I believe we wound up having 83 recommendations. Now that sounds like a lot, but I want to frame it in this way. That does not mean that there's 83 things wrong with your police department. It is our recommendations, considerations that you may want to think about to enhance the performance of the department. But that does come with a caveat too, because you have to consider if that fits in with the culture and the vision of your department. And in this case, you have a new but experienced police chief that's going to have his own vision of where the department is going and how our recommendations align with his vision of the department. So we give these recommendations for food for thought for departments to think about doing. Some of them I'll press a little bit more because I think that it would be very beneficial for it to be implemented. And then at the end, I'll certainly answer any questions that you may have. Our methodology is pretty consistent of what we do from department to department. We do analysis of workload of patrol and operations. Basically, our statistical analysis team, they will pull the CAD data for a year's period and look at all your calls for service and redefine some of the data in terms of specific categories that can be analyzed. They'll take certain types of crimes and break it into a category because they're all similar. And it's just a methodology that we use that makes it easier to understand when people read our reports. We also gather and document information. Like I told you, we send out a document request list before any on-site visit. It's labor intensive for the departments, and they're to be commended for providing us with that information because it's 90 items and it takes some time digging up that information. Then in this particular project, we were asked to do focus groups, which occurred January 16 through 19. The focus groups were done with internal members of the department to get their perspective, as well as external members. Now, I want to explain something with focus groups. Focus groups aren't necessarily gives you the findings of facts. They give you the findings of perceptions, and some of those perceptions may or may not be true. So the information in the report is the feedback of what our team heard, Ron and Paul, from the internal department and external. But I just want to caution people with focus groups because it's not always the exact facts, but perceptions. Then we had our site visit March 14th and 15th. We met with at that time, it was prior to the chief's arrival. We met with the interim chief and the interim assistant chief and some of the other staff members from the different divisions to talk about what we learned through the documents and to talk about their policies and their procedures and processes. So we generated a report with recommendations. We always do a draft report and we send it back to the agency to take a look at, because sometimes we're not going to get things 100% correct. We want their eyes on it. It's a process of transparency in which this is what we heard and saw, and it gives them a time to give us any feedback that they feel wasn't exactly correct, or here's some other information. And then it's through that communication, clarification, verification that we're able to have then a finalized report that we submitted to you all September 12, 2019. So I wasn't sure, do you all have access to the report? I can bring it up real quick if you don't. It's on the website? Okay, well, what I can address here to kind of simplify this is, one of the things I wanted to talk about is we did a comparison of your 2017, which at that time was the most recent statistics that we can find by crime rates, by jurisdiction. And I think that when I sat here, listened to your presentation about the film industry that I feel is very exciting for Roswell, you also have something else going very good for you all. You have a very, very low crime rate. And it's very impressive. In Roswell, for violent crimes in 2017, there was 113. Let me give you a comparison of something. Union City, that maybe has 20% of your population, had 1,224 violent crimes. Let's look at some others. East Point, that has 35,000 citizens, had 1,307 violent crimes. The only ones that kind of beat you out was Johns Creek. They have 85,000 population, a little bit less than you all, and they had 29 violent crimes. But if you get a chance to look on page 12, especially for your film industry, this is a very safe community to conduct that type of business in and to live in. The other analysis we like to look at is over time. What does the city of Roswell look like over time? And in your report on page 15, there's a couple of things that stick out, is that when you look in 2008, you had a population of 88,000. Your total crimes, which is violent and property, was 3,012. In 2017, you have a population of 95,602, and your total crime was now 1,803. So you had an 8.5 increase in population and a 40% decrease in crime. That's pretty amazing. And it's, I know with crime, certainly you all have a community that's a higher socioeconomic level, better educated compared to the state of Georgia, but still, that's to be commended. So we provided 83 recommendations. These are recommendations, they are not mandates. Every department and community is different. Their timing, their financial abilities, their vision, it all varies. So what we do is give a wealth of recommendation, almost like a smorgasbord, that you can pick which ones that you feel are the priorities to implement, the timeline you want to do it in, and most importantly, do you have the money to do it? One of the things we do recommend is that for the city and the police chief to sit down, look at the recommendations, and kind of come to a decision of, okay, what do we really need to prioritize for our department to implement? And what sort of timeline are we able to do it in? And do we have the funding to afford to do it? Within the department then, you want to identify one person, preferably not the chief because he has his hands full doing other duties, but another member within the department that would oversee this process of the implementation of the recommendations, the timeline, and the cost factors. And then what's really important is change is difficult for people, especially in organizations that are paramilitary in structure. With that said, when you're going to introduce change in a department, you really need to educate everyone in the department, not just the sworn, but the civilians, that everyone has an understanding of what the vision is, what the game plan is, what's going to get changed, and what's the timeline to do it on, so that they feel a part of the process, because buy-in is so important for organizational change. Now, I want to tell you a couple of the recommendations I picked out that I wanted to discuss. The first one is for each unit to have the responsibility for projecting and tracking overtime costs. It's important for everyone in the agency to understand that the department only has so much money to operate on, and that you need to connect your goals and objectives to costs so you get a return on investments. So every unit needs to be tracking their overtime and reporting it in to keep an eye on it, not like it's a free bank to just go to and turn in the overtime slips. But the managers, the supervisors are looking at that overtime on a weekly basis to benchmark where they're going and what they're accomplishing. In terms of patrol, one of the things that we found is that your patrol is stressed. When we did the analysis of calls for service by times during the day, without getting over technically with you, we recommend that departments do not go over 60% discretionary, 60% calls for service time. We'd like to see it a little bit lower than 60%. At times, you all were at 75%. Part of that can be because you had vacancies in patrol. But we're recommending, to help alleviate some of the stress from patrols in the calls for service, is that you fill the current 11 vacancies. There's 9 in patrols, there's 2 in traffic unit. That might have changed, Chief, if you hired other people and since the study. And then add also 4 positions, 1 to each squad, to help manage the calls for service load. That's going to have a financial impact, and that's something for you all to consider. We recommend filling the lieutenant's position in the Office of Professional Standards in a timely manner. We broke up the sections of the departments. I handled the internal affairs, and I can tell you that this is a strong recommendation that I would like to make, as well as CPSM. I know Leonard talked to you, Gary, about it. Is the internal affairs process is so important to guide the culture of the organization, as well as ensure the accountability and a sense of fairness to the troops, that everyone is being treated the same. A lot of departments leave it up to the chief to decide what the discipline is, and my understanding is not the last interim chief, but the original chief and the assistant chief, they more decided on what the discipline was going to be. We recommend that you take your policies and procedures and you create a discipline matrix. It's called progressive discipline. And the reason for that is you want to categorize every possible policy violation, and you want to put it into 4 or 5 categories of severity. Then you also want to look across at if they violated it the first time, second time, third, or fourth. First time it might be a written reprimand. The 4th time it might be termination. But everyone knows the rules about it. It's consistent because of the policy and the number of times that person violated a policy in itself. It doesn't tie the chief's hands because he is ultimately the one that's going to make the final decision. But it gives the troops an understanding of what they're looking at if they behave in a certain way and violate the policies. The other thing that is important too is when internal affairs investigation is completed, is that it gets sent out to the department members what the violation was and what the discipline is. That may sound kind of rough, and it might sound like it's embarrassing, but you're setting the tone for the culture, that there's transparency, and that there's an education process about what happens to people when they do things like that. We really believe that if you take this stance, it helps keep people more accountable to what they should and should not be doing. And it also puts a little bit more pressure on the supervisors. And it also gives them guidance of what the rules are and to look at that way. Then also we're recommending is your internal affairs unit really didn't have enough personnel to it to be doing the things that they should be doing. There's two processes. When someone did something really serious in the past, is that it got sent to internal affairs. Not so serious, the watch commanders can handle it. What you want is you want an internal affairs unit. That doesn't mean that the department has a lot of problems because they have a unit. It's that professional police departments have internal affairs units. And that with that unit, you have, we're recommending you fill the lieutenant's position, and you also add a sergeant's position, because they're going to be reviewing, they're going to take the major cases in the department and work them. In addition to, they're going to have strict oversight of the watch commanders' complaints that they handle to make sure that they're handled consistently. One of the things that came out in the focus group is that members say that things are done differently by shifts and by supervisors. So you want to blanket that with a little bit more consistency for that. So that's why you want an internal affairs unit. On top of that, there's other things that they need to be doing, is that they need to be doing random audits of things like property and evidence room to see whether the evidence has been submitted, the forms appropriately, that the items are being accounted for, and these are random to do. Also in patrol, they may pull 10 reports and look at to make sure that they're following policy and procedures and the letter of the law. They can also look at sick time use, auto accidents, really looking at things that will strengthen the department in the long run, but it's going to take a transition time for this. And that's why number 6 says to assign a sergeant, which would be additional cost, to the Office of Professional Standards. That's going to be a cost factor, but I'm going to tell you a lieutenant alone could not do all those things. It's just not going to happen. 11, the recruitment strategy should emphasize recruitment materials that can attract underrepresented populations for both sworn and civilian positions. First off, I want to say that the department is trying very hard for recruitment. This is a national problem. The last project I was on was the Parkland-Broward County project. A lot of people don't know Broward County was down 190 positions, okay? That's not unusual with police departments. We're seeing that more and more when we go to the departments. They're having trouble recruiting. I'm a full-time professor for St. Petersburg College Public Safety Administration program. And I can tell you, we're not getting the same numbers we used to. I've interviewed a lot of students. They see on Facebook officers being killed. They see the increase in suicides, which now which is higher than the line of duty deaths. And not everyone wants a body camera on them 24/7. Okay? It's a very different time, and it's a difficult occupation. So in no way does this mean it's a criticism for Roswell. The reality is it's tough recruiting, but you need to balance your numbers a little bit more for more minority officers to work in the department. And that's especially important to reflect the community so that the police are part of the community and the community are part of the police. They see people like themselves. That also helps a lot in minority communities. One of the things that came up, and this comes up a lot, is the pay scales for promotion. And sometimes it's because of a historical event of how they've given raises over time. But what we're hearing that's happening is that lieutenants don't make overtime. Sergeants do make overtime. So some sergeants might be making more than lieutenants. So they may be very good sergeants and make even better lieutenants, but they may not be applying for the position because they're going to lose money doing it. It's the same thing for, another example they gave us was when a police officer 2 is promoted to sergeant, they get 10% more, but a master police officer promoted to sergeant got 5% more. So it's an unbalanced system. I know that's a very difficult thing to address with the pay scales and sometimes the overlapping issues. It's just something for food for thought for y'all as to why sometimes you might not be getting the best people coming forth asking to be promoted or taking the promotional process. So basically to keep an eye on how you reward performance, not only on the individuals, but for promotions. We recommend that you do an ongoing cost analysis of the participation in regional task forces. What we have found in the past is that sometimes they're very lucrative to the departments for forfeitures and sometimes not so lucrative, and they could be used better locally. That's really a call that would be made by the chief to look at over a period of time. We recommended also that a 4th officer position be put back into the court security. The initial understanding, I believe, and you all had corrected us, was that the person was moved to another division, but then y'all responded back they were on medical leave. Do you know if that person is back now? Court?
So that's a complicated answer, but yeah, we have had some personnel in the court unit that were on medical leave. So right now we have 3 full-time positions assigned to the court unit. For that 4th, we take somebody off the road to fill that position on the days that courts are in session. As you pointed out earlier, the patrol officers are very stressed and somewhat short, and we don't want to leave the patrol function short. This was an efficient way to operate that 4th position.
And, you know, a lot of times people, this is a beautiful building here, and a lot of times people think nothing will ever, happen. The courts are running smooth. I was a lieutenant over court security at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. We had 5 sites and 151 deputies. And at the smallest courthouse that very few people went to, we had a shooting right at the mags. Right at the mags. There was only 2 officers at the mags. Thank God they were experienced officers, and they killed the perpetrator who pulled the gun on them. So you just never know when these things are going to happen. It may seem everything's going fine and smooth, and we've never had an incident, and you'll be taken by surprise when it happens. So we recommend filling those court positions. 39, you've got the metal detector?
No, we don't have a second courtroom, so.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have the second courtroom, so we didn't need the second.
Okay, thank you. One of our team members made the recommendation of doing a security barrier on the building adjacent to Hill Street and do a security assessment for the rest of the building, as well as looking at flowing into 42 And 43, making sure the cameras are upgraded and replaced and that there's a panic alarm in the front desk. Number 48, you had two people working property and evidence, and they were both equal to one another. We recommend making one of them a supervisor. That gives a little bit more accountability than peers working together. Number 56, we're recommending another officer added to the community relations unit. The reason for that is your Citizens Academy, your PIO at the time was overseeing that. That Citizens Academy should be put under community relations. The PIO is such a critical role for social media, for community engagement, community connections, and most of all if you're looking at the filming industry, to make sure you're on top of everything. And that's a little laborsome having them. They should just be doing the PIO work and doing it well. We also would like to see a Citizens Police Academy twice a year instead of once a year, so you're going to need the additional officer to help run that, as well as taking that Citizens Academy from the PIO. Increase the records unit full-time staff with the addition of one record specialist in order for the supervisor to concentrate on supervisory duties. Our team member found that the supervisor was doing more workload than actually supervising. And here's something that we consistently find in police departments, and it might be just the nature of how policing is structured. Civilians sometimes don't feel valued. We're on the same level as sworn people. And so I'm not saying in any way there's a morale problem with the record specialist, but it's helpful if that record specialist can focus on being a supervisor and not wearing two different hats and looking what his or her people are doing. We made the recommendation of looking at outside vendors to enable citizens to access all police reports online. The record section has a lot of work to do, and if technology can be used to help reduce that workload, that is always a plus. But there is a dollar amount that would be attached to that and a search for the right vendor that would put the right system into your department. Apparently you had a backlog in data entry, and our teammate made the recommendation of seeing if you had any part-time retired records employees that you could bring in to maybe help get through the backlog until you finish dealing with that. Now with your comm center, the team member, their perspective was, in talking to the supervisor there, is that you have 5 supervisors. One of them is a training coordinator for the comm center. But these 4 supervisors, they're on, each one is on a shift because you have 4 shifts. They're working sometimes as dispatchers, and you need someone there that has the eyes of being a supervisor when you're dispatching for police, fire, and EMS to troubleshoot if there's a problem, or you get a really hot call of an event happening like a Parkland incident. You need someone in there taking control of what's going on. We're recommending that you add 4 supervisors, and that would give you 2 supervisors per shift. Those 2 supervisors can not only oversee the supervision, but can deal with some of the administrative tasks too that would be done, evaluating their staff a little bit more. And then we're also recommending 1 dispatcher added per shift. And I want to tell you, it sounds like a lot of people, but that's such a critical role. And I can tell you from the Parkland incident, comm center was a critical role when that happened. And the gentleman from our team that oversaw the part of the comm center, he said that he thought it was one of the best run ones he has seen. It's just he felt the staff was being a little bit overtaxed, needed maybe a little bit more breaks than what they were having. And to see something running so well, you don't want it to slide back. And that's why he made the recommendations he did. But he wanted me to tell you all that you have one of the best comm centers that he has seen. And he's been to a lot of them, I can tell you that. One concern that he did have, and I know this is difficult, especially when plans are already made, and also it's one of these what-if things. But we recommend that comm centers are not built that close to other government buildings, such as police or city hall. In the event, the one in a trillion, where there's a bomb goes off, and it's too close to the comm center. If you lose that comm center, you have no way to operate for your policing. It's going to make it extremely difficult. I know plans have already been made. It's just a consideration, food for thought, to have it a little bit more away from the police department, being more a standalone, rather than someone coming in and hitting a bunch of buildings at once. And then his last recommendation was if you could, to find some part-time dispatchers that could fill in until you could get the staffing up to where it needed to be. Hiring people takes time, and finding the right people takes time too. So if you have some maybe retired ones that want to work a few hours a week, that might be the best route to go until you could get the hiring in place. As I said before, these are recommendations. You all need to decide what is the best fit for the Roswell Police Department. We recommend a timeline for implementation, but that should be done by you all because you know your financial capabilities, what your priorities should be. We can make recommendation of priorities, but you're the ones that determine what's going to get funded. But we believe that, if you implement some of these, that it's going to help your service delivery, your efficiency, and your community satisfaction. It says a lot to me when a city and a police department is willing to have an outside entity come in and take a hard look at every part of their process, procedures, and personnel. That takes a lot of courage. And a lot of cities and police departments won't do that. So I want to commend you all because I think that you have an excellent police department. You've had some rough spots previously, but I think you're off to a great start. And I think there's only good things in the future. I want to thank you all for hiring us and to have the courage for us to come in and to be even sitting here with you, giving you feedback about your department, and thank the men and women of Roswell Police Department. Any questions that I can answer?
Council, I have questions. Yes, Kaiser.
Yeah, so thank you for coming in and doing the work that you've done. It's quite an extensive report, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I think that has really changed is bringing on Chief Conroy. I think the citizens of Roswell should know that as far as taking us to the next level, I think it was a huge and great hire for us. Just as a footnote, Chief Conroy had more sworn officers in his prior department than we have employees in the city of Roswell. And so, from a standpoint of taking us to the next level, implementing the important items, it was a huge and really important change that occurred. And so thank you for coming. The last thing I'd like to say is that item number 11 was particularly interesting and important to me, and that is designing the recruiting to bring on members of underrepresented populations in the city of Roswell. I remember the draft report indicated that about 36% of our population is in those underrepresented categories. And I think that would be a major improvement that you can work. And I realize it's difficult when you have a shortage a complete shortage of potential hires, but to put some focus on that, I think would be really critical to us. So again, I thought that was an important one.
If I could real quick, and I don't want to jump the gun on that because we're working with the community relations staff of our recruiting campaign. We have had some good success. We do have ways to go, but hopefully in the next few weeks you will see our recruiting campaign that's going to go out, and it's Choose Your Path, to where we're going to highlight some of the things that we do well here at Roswell with our detective division, our traffic division, our patrol division, and some of our forensics, highlighting some of the options that you have. Some officers like to be a patrol officer, some like to go into detective, some like to have a canine, some like to ride a motorcycle, and we have all those options available. That's going to be part of our recruiting effort, but we're also expanding that recruiting to include all the members of our department. We do not have a recruiting unit at the Roswell Police Department. And hopefully, mid-next year, we're not going to need one at all because we will just have a single vacancy that can be filled at will. But we've solicited a group of employees, and it was a very diverse group of employees, intentionally, to come in, and they all have different areas that we have them looking and trying to recruit employees. But you're going to see that, and we've had some benefit, but we're not where we need to be yet.
Great, thank you.
And it's not going to occur overnight. A consideration you might want to be is if you do approve the additional officer for the community relations, if you could do a reach out to the minority community for the Explorer program. It's not going to pay off right away, but it might get your own community minorities interested in a career down the road with the department. But I just want to preface, we're seeing this at all departments having a big problem recruiting, so it's tough.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Very detailed report. And, since was this like over a year ago, can you please remind what was the original scope and purpose of this engagement?
The
Original scope and purpose of this engagement.
Well, what we were asked to do from did you call Leonard, or was it an RFP? RFP, okay. What we're requested to do is to look at every unit in the department, to look at staffing levels, to make recommendations as to their processes, procedures, their strategic approaches to it. So it's very, very broad in which we do.
Okay, because this brings me to, I read all these 83 recommendations, and I didn't see anything about two key issues that happened, unfortunately, here, was the reporting up the chain of command seems to be broken at some point. Previous chief stated that didn't know about what was going on with those videos. So I didn't see anything address the reporting up the chain of command. And I didn't see anything about the video review policy. If we have one, if we need to improve one, or we need to come with a video review policy, because it seems like a few key people didn't see the videos that they were produced by the cameras that we invested on. I didn't see anything on your report regarding those two, which I think was original what triggered this study.
We did not address your prior chief because herein lies the problem. We didn't have an opportunity to talk to him or his assistant chief. So all we would get was anecdotal information.
What about the reporting?
When we came
the
on,
chain of command? How is reporting?
This was a tough study to do because of the timing on it. You had a police chief and assistant chief that left. We were called in. You had an interim chief and interim assistant chief. Then our company did your police selection, which resulted in Chief Conroy. So at the time we were in there, we were dealing with an interim chief. So to look back and to report on what the prior chief did or did not do would really require for us to have a sit-down talk with him, because I'd have a lot of questions to ask him. But that was not really within the scope of the project.
And what about the video review policy?
We had the chief from Boca Raton review the video of your canine incident and gave some information and recommendations towards that. But in terms of video review, that's where I think the shortfall comes of not having an internal affairs unit, because that would be part of their responsibilities, to be reviewing those on a consistent basis, randomly pulling them, and that's very, very labor intensive. When I looked at your internal affairs unit, you had bones to deal with, and it didn't surprise me why maybe you had some of the issues you had in the past. So if you put some meat on those bones by additional staffing, that's one of those random audits that would be done. The video from the cars, from the individual cameras, from the property and evidence receipts, from pulling reports, looking at accidents, but it takes a unit to do that, and you all really weren't in the position to be that thorough to do that.
Okay.
And if I may, a little bit on the policies and procedures. So, one, I want to remind everybody that Roswell Police Department is state accredited and nationally accredited by CALEA, and they've been accredited by CALEA since 92, 93? 95. So many years of accreditation. What accreditation does is it looks at your policies and procedures. You have policies and procedures, you follow those policies and procedures, and you have evidence that you follow them. Now, one of the shortfalls that I think came about in some of these circumstances is policies and procedures may not have been followed, and that information was not passed up, and appropriate action was not taken. And that is something that can be caught by the internal affairs function, as well as Office of Professional Standards in reviewing these. But if you do have somebody who is going to take information about an investigation and not share it upward or anywhere, then that could create an issue, and that is something that could occur today or in the future. But when you find something like that happens, you do have to take appropriate and effective action, and that's something that I guarantee will happen.
Yes, since our video system for the every officer is quite new, I just want to make sure that follow a procedure for video review, since we have the technology now.
Yes.
We didn't have before. We didn't have in 85, and in 95 we didn't have the video. So I want to make sure that the video section on the policy have been inserted and explained and educated on.
Yes. And the CALEA does have standards regarding all those video policies that we do have in place.
Great, thank you.
Additional questions? Yes.
Yes, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done, and Chief Conroy and the staff, and all the focus groups and the advisory committee that participated in the process. And I think you've given us some really solid recommendations across the department that will improve and strengthen every area, from diversity, community relations, internal affairs, and the 911 center. I know we're already taking some steps forward on some of those recommendations, and I just look forward to working with you, Chief Conroy, and with this council on prioritizing and implementing some of these other recommendations in the very near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to express that the Center for Public Safety Management wants to have ongoing relationship with our clients. So if, Chief, you have any questions, or feel free, my cell, give me a call, and we'll work together. We want to be a resource and be helpful to you all.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And so, Chief, so how many active officers do we have today, approximately?
134, 135.
Because, so I definitely appreciate you looking at this, and I think it's so important, and I'm appreciative to Councilman Zapata for kind of bringing up what really brought up the need and the awareness to look at this, because what we have about 135 officers, and I've interacted with so many of them, not only since being on council, but before I ever even thought about running for council. Just seeing them in the community, we have some of the best police officers anywhere. And then the challenge that we have is all it takes is one or two bad apples to give a bad reputation, when we have so many that are just day in and day out just working hard for our residents. So what I want to make sure we're doing is we're really looking at this closely and focusing and prioritizing on ensuring that in the future, we're reducing the opportunity for just one bad apple to give really a bad reputation when all your officers work so hard to really not only protect us but be active members of our community. So I guess my real question is, what are the next steps, Chief, for both you to feel confident and for this council and this whole community to feel confident that in the future we are on just that better path?
Good. Dr. Razor Cordero stole one of my lines that I was going to use, and that's to thank everybody from the mayor to the city council to Gary to the police command staff for inviting CPSM in to look at the organization. That's a scary thing to do because you don't know what they're going to find. And hopefully the goal was to find these hidden problems that were in the department. Now, their report was a very glowing report. We do have a great police department that we can all be very proud of, and I think that's great. In addition to their report, I'm also doing my own evaluation. I have come in and I've met with every police employee. I've met with many community members because who are the experts on the police department? But it's the employees in the community that we serve. And that's where I wanted to get direct information. I've met individually one-on-one. Some didn't necessarily want to speak to me, but some were very vocal, and we had hour-long meetings and told me all their thoughts on, I would ask them, I said, what does the police department do well? What would you change if you were chief? And those type of questions that I think helped guide our conversations to tell me what's working. And we talked about perception and what's truth and what you hear in those meetings. Either way, that's somebody's perception. They may be entirely wrong and may need to be corrected. And I've had conversations with employees where they say, hey, we feel targeted, we feel discipline's heavy-handed. And when you present them the facts and they look at that and say, well, oh, maybe that's not the case. Now, I do wholeheartedly agree that we need a schedule of penalties to where an employee knows if I violate this rule, this is what's going to happen. It's not 100%, but it's a 90%. And one of the examples that I use is violation of law. So one of our policies is violation of law. So if you break the law, you get penalized. The book might say, hey, you get a day off because if you get a speeding ticket. But if you're arrested for child molestation, no, you're not going to get that day off. We're going to already jump over here to termination because you have no business being a police officer. So that's some of the examples, and letting our police officers know that. They need to know what's going on ahead of time and keeping them in the loop. I talk a lot to them about procedural justice, and people think, oh, that's how we treat the community, make sure everybody has a voice, fairness in the process, impartiality, and transparency. But it's also how we deal with our employees. And that's important. Like you said, our officers, 135 officers, that's who's doing the work. I'm not out there arresting people. I'm not out there writing tickets and answering these alarm calls at 2 in the morning. They are. My job is to support them and take care of them and make sure they're following the rules. So part of that, I kind of went the long way around, I'm sorry, but that's what I hope to do with this. With the recommendations, what my intention, where do we go from here? So we've got 83 recommendations. We're developing a spreadsheet to where we're going to put them on the website alongside this gap analysis report. And I am happy to say of those 83 recommendations, 60 have already been completed or are in progress. So that just leaves that remainder that are under consideration, and some are rejected. They don't fit exactly what we want to do, and some take a lot of planning, some take a lot of funding. I think we saw a lot of added positions that you might see some of that in the 2020 budget. Maybe not all. We have our internal discussions, and I don't want to come in blanket just say, oh yeah, add all these people. We analyze it and determine what's fair and what's appropriate.
Yes, Councilmember Judy.
Real quick, because I know we have a meeting coming up, but thank you again for the findings. I think to kind of expound on what Councilmember Palermo said, as we go into 2020 budgeting, we're looking at these 83 recommendations. We're looking at funding. We're looking at new positions that help us not make those mistakes again, such as the internal affairs stuff we have to do. So when we get into this funding, it costs money. And we're going to have to look and see what we balance oftentimes in the city, we get lost here in things that are trivial at points, and this is real stuff, because if we don't have safety in this town, none of that other stuff matters. So I'm really excited to dig into this, and in 2020, when we go down that road, it costs money to make sure we're going in the direction we're going. So I know we'll have a lot of balancing to do when we hit that. So thanks again.
Additional comments, questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, moving forward, there will be a task force to prioritize, put a cost, the timeline, the overall condition, and the progress report to mayor and council of all 83. There will be a task force on the police department to study and work on that, and if, get a report to mayor and council on the.
So as I mentioned, my intention is I have a spreadsheet. We've already, the 83 recommendations, 60 are in progress or have been completed. Actually, 40 of those have been completed, so 20 are in progress already. We're going to upload that to the website adjacent to the gap analysis report to let everybody know exactly where we are, which recommendations. There will be some that we may not fit our plan, and we're going to mark those as rejected. My plan is it's going to be color-coded so you can view it. Green is complete, yellow's in progress, red's under consideration, and gray is rejected. So you can really look at it and get a view. But already 60 out of the 83 are completed or in progress. So there may not be a need for an updated progress report, because some of these items will be coming in the budget. All those position recommendations, those are all new positions. We can't touch those today anyway. We're trying to fill our current vacancies, and that's our plan. That's where our primary focus. So we can balance, and we do the same thing that you'll do when it's budget time, because you can't fund all of these. So I can't fill all these positions unless I'm taking them out of the patrol division. And we need our uniform patrol division to function. And as those numbers grow, and as we have success recruiting and hiring people, then we'll start plugging in these other positions as will fit our whole overall model. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Thank you, Chief. Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.